I pressed it once.
It muted, they were unmuted.
Oh, well, there you have it. Okay, so this meeting is expertly being run today. This is the Real Estate Development Advisory Committee. Present for the committee is Dr. Malamed, and, oh no, senior moment.
Melissa Wade.
Melissa Wade, I knew it was, I knew it was, yeah. So that'll become more frequent, I'm told. And this is the Real Estate Development Advisory Committee. It's 5:40 almost. Present for the corporation, Rafika Amin, our CFO, Vice President. Introduce yourself again.
Claudia Filipina, Senior Director of Capital Planning.
Okay.
Becky Beaver, Director of Communications and Public Affairs.
Okay, Mary Cunine, Chief Operating Officer, Vice President, President of the corporation, BJ Jones, and General Counsel and Vice President, Lance Powell. And I'm Howard Powell. So here we are. Anyway, we have a fairly full agenda today. We're going to be looking over our ground leases and conversion, the master retail lease, for reasons that will show up in our presentation. And this is to re-educate us primarily about the moving parts of ground leases, retail master lease. So when issues come up soon, hopefully, we'll be prepared to deal with it. So,
great. Okay. And
The PDF
I have to share my screen.
you don't have to, there's
I
no
don't.
one joined.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, as Howard said, we have a range of items today that we're presenting to give you context for what will be some decisions that we'll look to you for coming down the pike, and also for those at home, and give them some context too on these matters, because at least for some of them in particular, as you'll hear, we'll be looking for community input. That's you, Judy. Okay, all right. Yeah.
right.
I have
Right.
touch John.
Right, let everyone recognize that Bay Christian, our final fourth committee member, has joined the meeting.
Okay, great. I wanted to give a brief overview related to ground leases. And I'll get into this a little bit during the presentation, but basically the reason this is top of mind for REDAC is because of the 10-year extension of the master lease and what flows from that. And some of it will be subject to executive session as we talk about specific building and specific negotiations. So this is just table setting, if you will. Stepping back about 30,000 feet, as a reminder to most, if not all of you, the city of New York has leased most of the land on Roosevelt Island, and did so initially for a term that ended in 2068. And in turn, our organization subleases the land when it comes to residential development to building owners to build housing and to manage all of those buildings. And ground rent, which is the key component in ground leases, and the one that is of great interest when it comes to negotiation, is in the lease to compensate REAC for the value of the land that it is leasing to these building owners. And so as part of that framework, REAC has a fiduciary duty to receive an appropriate value for the property, which is a public asset, while also maintaining the neighborhood for residents and visitors and workers and students. So we'll get into it in a moment. No two ground leases really are the same on REAC, but for the most part, there's several components to the various ground leases that we have with buildings. I mentioned ground rent, which is the payment for leasing the land from us. Also, a component typically involves tax equivalency payments, which, because of our structure, is in lieu of what would otherwise be considered real estate taxes elsewhere in the city. Also, in our ground leases, there are a number of different transaction fees that REAC collects. Main examples of that are for refinancings, or if there's a building sale, condo unit sales, and there's some other transactions for which we can receive a fee. It depends on a number of factors and also on each ground lease. There are also potential payments for condo conversions and resales of buildings. We also, through our ground lease, get a public safety fee to help fund the public safety department. In a very, very few cases, we get a fee that's related to the bus service we provide on the island. And there are also provisions baked into the ground leases that give us the authority to charge buildings to recoup funding for a variety of operations and services that we provide, whether it be maintenance or horticulture, AVAC, and other services. But those fees, even though we have a provision that enables us to charge fees for those things, REAC does not.
And just to kind of let you know in terms of income and expenses, so for example, our bus operations cost us about $1.8 million, but the bus revenue we're getting maybe is a little over $300,000. So that's a huge gap in terms of, what REAC has to cover.
That's right. That's right. A number of things are heavily subsidized through ground rent revenues, other than these other vehicles that are in ground leases.
And you mentioned conversion payments too, and we've been getting several of those.
Yes.
When they convert to market value, some of these units, and it's a 2% fee on gross sales proceeds.
And we're able to kind of intercept the mortgage recording tax when it might arise because if we're refinancing for a building.
That's right. That's right. Yep. So a number of items in the leases. Okay. So I talked a little bit earlier also about how no two ground leases are really the same. And that's there's good reason for that, because many of these leases were established at different times when the market might have been different. Also, these buildings have different characteristics in terms of the amount of affordability, whether it's rental or a condo, for example. But just to note for you, as we kind of start to dig into the details in the coming months into some of these ground leases, I just wanted to flag some of the examples of these variations. And so in some cases, buildings paid a lump sum upfront, and we do not receive ongoing ground rent from them. some do pay a tax equivalency payment to REDAC, and some do not, mostly because of the affordability structure and the incentives that were provided for them. The original wire buildings, incidentally, the tax equivalency payments flow through to the state, to the Empire State Development Corporation through a longstanding agreement, in essence, to recoup them for their original investment in the island. I mentioned briefly that only a few buildings pay a fee related to bus service. Manhattan Park, and Octagon. And although, again, bus services is something that could be contemplated under those other broader island service fees or community facility fees that I mentioned earlier, the affordable housing requirements vary by building, and also how rents change over time, how they increase over time, also varies by buildings. We have buildings where there's a formula every certain number of years, where there's a calculation, usually based on an appraised value. Others have specified escalations baked into their rent, so we know based on the ground rent provisions in the lease exactly what those dollar amounts will be over time. And some are percentage-based, just to give you an idea of some of the differences which make ground leases fun. And also, just to give you a sense, this table really is to give you a sense of the range that I was talking about, of the variation, just to give you a few examples. And I will say that, this is based on the best available information that we have at the moment. But as we're engaging with these buildings, we're always working, Drew's always working, on, updating and collecting this data. And so I'm just using this as an example to kind of illustrate, again, that these buildings are different and a little bit about why they are different. And so there's two slides here, but you can see the number of units range from around 200 to upwards of 1,000 units, and monthly or annual ground payments range, I'll just go to the next slide as an example, from $0 to upwards of $8 million a year. And similarly, the tax equivalency payments also range too, from 0 to closer to $1.7 million a year. And I should flag, as like there are escalations, some of the increases with buildings does change over time, and also for many of these buildings, tax equivalency payments will change over time too. So some are phased in, and so you will see for some buildings that going up over time.
Is that why those two don't pay ground rent?
And so that's so the ones that don't pay ground rent is because of the lump fee structure up front.
Correct. They
Yeah.
paid up front.
Yeah.
So the usual mechanism is that an appraisal will be done. From our perspective, start the negotiation. And there'll be arguments about how much of the appraised value should be realized from the combination of payments that REDAC might receive. And payments are structured within discussion, and then the values are determined to kind of achieve rough equity. And because each building is in its own, if you look at the Southtown buildings, there was a master development plan, but there are variations on that depending on the timing. And so there's tremendous variation, one building to the other to the other. And so we look at these things, if we are very much involved, an appraisal will probably be needed or updated. And that'll be the start and the structure of payments will have to be developed, depending on the precedent for the building and what else happens in the negotiation. And affordability is usually a discount. You can see it. You can see for the slide that there's a strong discount as an incentive. So, those things are recognized.
The percent of affordable housing, what is that? Is that like what it is now? Is there some sort of plan that locks that in?
Yeah.
specifically?
That also depends. In some cases, it's in the ground lease, but more likely through a separate regulatory agreement with Housing Finance Agency, or kind of sister state affordable housing agency. And that also depends on the building. In some cases, that number is permitted to go down through some kind of attrition, where other buildings, it may be required to stay stable. Yes. Okay, so.
And it hasn't fluctuated over the last several years. They've actually met their maximum in terms of the percentage that they're supposed to have as affordable.
Yeah. So, but, something that we care about and should continue talking about as we think about these
And we should-
negotiations.
Right, and we should talk about the type of affordable housing.
That's right.
that it is.
Yeah, that's
Because
exactly.
not a lot of them.
When you
do
think
not.
about it,
Yeah.
affordability, it's at what AMI bands,
Mm-hmm.
at what term.
And whether it's being taken by postdocs who are,
Yes, right, exactly. And like, what's the process for verifying them? Yep, all the things. Yep. Okay, so in December, it was made official, as you're aware, that the City of New York and us, we extended the lease agreement by 10 years to 2078. And this, as we think about lease negotiations, we should keep in mind that it's a relatively incremental shift, but it's still meaningful in that it does provide a little longer term that provides greater certainty in terms of the buildings as we know them still being here for another 10 years. That helps relieve some of the pressure around financing for building owners and homeowners, subject to kind of the negotiations with us to extend their subleases in tandem. And so that's what's prompting these negotiations with each of the buildings. And no surprise, all of them have expressed interest in negotiating with REDAC to extend the term of their lease another 10 years. Just on a technical note, there's only 2 buildings where the lease requires us to negotiate with them now, which is Westview and Island House. It's in essence triggered by this master lease extension. We have to engage with them, which we have. It doesn't require us to engage with other buildings yet, but we are absolutely willing to engage and start the conversation because we care about the benefits to them and to us when it comes to fiscal responsibility and affordability and certainty. And so we want to, explore these opportunities in earnest over the next coming months. And so just kind of on the horizon, what's happening now is that, building owners are working on or have submitted proposals for 10-year lease extensions for us to consider, and we have started reviewing them as they have come in. And again, just to reiterate, fiscal responsibility is top of mind. Affordable housing protections are top of mind. But again, as we talk in an executive session, maybe there are other factors that might be top of mind too, like sustainability, for example, or resiliency. And so then we'll develop counter proposals in consultation with the board, and certainly this is where REDAC, comes into play. And there's usually a back and forth, sometimes a bit of a painful one. Real estate negotiations, even small ones, can be tough. But at the end of the day, any lease amendment has to be approved by the board of directors. There's a few other things in addition to these ground lease negotiations that we have to interact with buildings on related to real estate transactions and related to the items I mentioned in key provisions of the leases. So, for example, we have a building that coming down the pike in the next year or so that has one of those rent reset formulas for their ground rent, and so we will be working with them on that. And there's also periodic requests a building will refinance their buildings, kind of the normal course of business. There was one that was approved by the board at the last session. These are ministerial items because the ground lease requires us to approve them as long as they've met their obligations in the ground lease. And so there are always checks to make sure, and sometimes it's illegal, that things look good, and then legal checks to make sure things look good. But those things are, as well as building sales are things that typically we have to approve when they come through, but we do some necessary due diligence. And often, although not every time, there is a transaction fee, sometimes small, sometimes not so small. And so that's why we're always eager to work with the buildings to make sure REDAC is getting what it is owed. And so that's the trajectory that we're on. I would say, and one other important note, which the board knows, but just for people out there to know that we take seriously, is that if there's a matter for a specific building that any board member has an interest in, that of course they'll recuse themselves from any actions related to that particular building. So we will. So this is work that we have already begun, but I imagine over the summer and the months to follow, we're hoping that we can build momentum and potentially have some potential lease amendments ready for the fall. But there's a lot of ifs there in terms of how the negotiations go and the proposals go, and so we'll see where that goes. And again, I said anything else we discussed should probably be best for an executive session, whether it's today or over the course of the summer as things become timely. But that's the gist of what we're looking at with regards to ground leases.
The ground lease typically will control a portion of land just about coinciding with the perimeter of the building, maybe 5 feet beyond it. And unless I'm mistaken, the ground leases don't talk about the actual building itself in the sense of mandating any particular fixture, function, that sort of thing.
I think that's generally right, but also something that we want to double check as we enter into these negotiations.
And are we negotiating this, or is DHCR?
We are negotiating the ground leases, and then to the extent there's an affordability requirement, like let's say, for example, we wanted to extend affordability requirements for another 10 years if we're going to extend the term. That likely will require a complementary regulatory agreement that DHCR would have to field. So we'll work with DHCR to have both things happen.
That's almost every building.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so that's the gist on ground rent.
Okay, good questions from anyone?
Okay. And then we wanted to bring this up while we were talking about real estate briefly, because there's an item coming up that I don't, it's already baked into the ground lease. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll just go through the slides. So also, as the members are aware, we also have a ground lease-like structure in terms of our agreement with Hudson Related, which occurred in 2011 for most of the retail spaces along Main Street, and predates many of us, but done through an RFP process. And it's for a very long term. It's for 30 years with an option to extend, and there are notice requirements for that, for a renewal to be effectuated. This lease is subject to a set rent schedule that has standard escalations each year. But this one, like I was mentioning with some of the residential buildings, has a rent reset formula where the rent will be recalculated and potentially increased based on current appraised value. And so we wanted to make you aware that even though this is already baked into the lease, that reset and change in ground rent is coming. And so that's where, and that's set for, that is triggered in August of this year. And so that's where they will do some version of an appraisal. We'll kick the tires on it. Drew will look at it, and combination of finance and legal and Hudson Related will land on a new value for the ground rent. And so it's kind of tangentially related to the ground leases for the residential buildings, but we also wanted to put that on your radar screen because of that rent reset that's coming down the pike.
I have two questions.
Yeah.
Let me know if you're gonna answer one of
Yeah.
them later. So it says rent is inflated 2.5% per year. So what percentage are we at right now?
Yes. So we are at, so the rent, so 2.5%, and Drew can answer this too, is just the annual increase. So that's how we've gotten to 1,073,000 from the 900 something that they started at in 2011. And so this year, instead of the usual 2.5%, we're going to do this appraisal to reset it.
So maybe this is a silly question. Is there a possibility that it could go down?
And if it does, I don't think it will, just because of the, market values in general, and inflation and other economic factors, but, we do take the greater of.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So
So if we're, if they're paying us more now and it turns out, like through this analysis, it's less, we'll still get the greater of.
right, that's right. I don't believe there's a floor baked into it, though,
Okay.
so that could be a risk.
And then my second question has to do with the Southtown commercial, which I believe is not part of this.
That's right. That is not part of that, and that is not, that is not our, that's not part of our retail portfolio.
So we get nothing.
That's, do we get
That's-
anything?
we do
No,
not.
it's all through
Mhm.
that, it's all through the Hudson-related
Mhm.
buildings, yeah, it's completely separate. And the Westview building is also completely separate.
Thank you.
It's a-
I can't be quiet. So, does this space, the stores are empty or occupied, or you just get the same rent?
We get the same rent,
I wish
but
us-
there is a percent, do you want to talk about the percentage?
Oh, yeah, so,
Rent on top?
yeah, there's a participation rent. So, each year, we have to review the, Hudson-related, financial statements. And if they have a net profit, we are eligible to receive 50% of that net income. Now, if they have a net loss, unfortunately, we won't receive anything. But if there is net income, we will get 50% of that on top of the guaranteed rent we're getting.
But we do still get the base rent, even if there's a loss,
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
But if they do better, we do
Would you
better.
pay a penalty for not renting their stores? They're not losing anything by not renting their stores. The
Who?
opposite.
Who's not losing?
Hudson-related.
Yeah, because they're not getting
Other
money
Other than,
paid.
they're not getting income to cover their base rent.
Correct, exactly, because we're still getting our, monthly payment.
Have we been getting any participation payments?
So the first one we got was in 2022,
Okay.
and then we have recorded a receivable for 2024, but we have not received that payment yet. The financials we just received for December 31st, 2025, there's a net loss, so we won't be getting anything this year.
And the only thing that is changing is the rent, like
Yeah.
nothing else is negotiable.
Correct.
That's right. And now, I guess, if we were interested in that, just hypothetically speaking, if we wanted to change some of the requirements in the lease, that would require a negotiation that they'd want to come to the table for. So in theory, if we were to, I don't know, that was like a negotiate an extension, or if we were going to go out with an RFP for the next term, that would be when that could be opened up, but at the moment.
And just to labor point, the retail space in South End will never be on the table.
That's right. Unless something that were engineered, but they'd have to want to. Yeah, so that one is, so we wanted to flag that one for you, just as kind of a real estate FYI. And that's all we have on that item.
Can I, just sort of related to it,
Yeah,
medical space? Any,
no, there has not been any progress on medical space. I asked Hudson related again about it, and do so periodically. Also, the bank has come up to me and have reiterated that. And what I get from them is that they have found it harder to find a tenant for that or other tenants in general, and harder than they expect.
Isn't there a non-performance agreement if you don't rent our space? 30 years, who's going to leave?
Yeah.
30 years, please tell me. Who
There-
does this? Who does this? 10 years
There-
ago.
Yeah.
Who does this?
Yeah.
I'm not answering that. I'm not answering. I mean, you don't give someone free-handed renting for 30 years. And that's
Or
when you do that.
forever.
Mhm.
That's off the record.
I- uh-huh. Okay, so that's that. So again, just with regards, then we'll move into different type of real estate conversation in the moment. But in terms of these transactions, we'll keep you apprised. So as we have, as a framework for a counter proposal take shape, that's we likely have a check-in. And with regards to this commercial rent reset, we will, notify you once we have an idea of what that's looking like for your awareness. And I would say that, like, as as you're thinking about the buildings that you don't have an interest in, that you can let us know, let me and Drew and Lance know. Certainly, I would also say that could also warrant a REDAC meeting and an executive session for us to have a conversation, because anything related to building negotiations, we should do an executive session.
And should it be executive session with the whole board or just?
It can be an executive session with REDAC first, but it can also be with the whole board in addition to, or instead of, depending on how you feel. But that's in terms of the advisory capacity of REDAC, that's a great role for you to play and weigh in on. That's what you think about this stuff. And again, I would say that, we want fiscal responsibility is top of mind, affordability is top of mind. We want to get our fair share. But again, in terms of these negotiations, we just also have to be mindful of the 10-year extension being incremental, and to the extent there's a longer-term master lease extension that would then give us the opportunity to work with buildings on an even longer-term extension. That would give us leverage to dig even deeper on things that we might want to revisit in the ground leases. So
Is that a conversation that's happening?
that is, we have touched base with the new administration about it, and so it is on their radar screen as they get their ducks in a row. So they are interested in continuing a conversation that we started in the fall, which is good. But maybe after they come down from the next parade. So TBD, but we have made contact on that front. So we're eagerly waiting. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so let's move to thinking about this half of the presentation is about thinking about spaces differently. And I would say for both of these, this is, with the exception of Eleanor's here, which we are moving forward on, which we'll touch on in this presentation. The other items that we're talking about, this is the beginning of a conversation. And so for purposes of today, we wanted to bring these to your attention, thinking about other areas on the island too, but certainly interested in some first thoughts on these items, which, not to hide the ball, we're thinking about the West Side spaces and piers, for which there's some opportunities and also long deferred maintenance issues that just need to be addressed somehow. And also just wanted to touch base on the tram ideas that we've received for the old tram cars. So this isn't the only moment for you to provide advice. And for those watching at home, this isn't, we'll be in touch to get your ideas, but we wanted to bring it to REDAC first. And so I'll turn it over to Mary and Claudia to walk through the West Side infrastructure points of interest first.
Thank you, BJ, and thank you everyone for joining tonight. To piggyback on what BJ mentioned, tonight's not about presenting a finished design. It's about starting the conversation and really engaging the community and the REDAC committee to understand what is working well in these spaces, what could be improved, what we need to focus on. We did include a few thought-provoking questions following each of the spaces, just to get your wheels turning about what to think about when you're looking at these spaces. And we will be having a workshop to walk these spaces with the community, and also a survey to collect the ideas, but I'll get to that more in the end. So for now, we'll start with the tram waterfront open space. So for this space, interestingly, it's already become, I
Turn, show that.
think you scroll down.
I can drive it.
That's all right, thank you. I want to believe I'm capable of doing that.
So the tramway waterfront open space, it's already become a destination despite
Are you
having,
familiar with this space?
Yeah, it's where all the tourists go down and try to jump in the river.
Right.
It's the most dangerous thing in the world. They're all going down there.
right.
But if we want to lose a tourist, they go down, we have put a barrier, they just be a damn thing, just keep going down there.
Yeah, so as Judy mentioned, it's a
Totally.
often frequented space by visitors. It's already become really a destination spot for photos, despite having any real formal amenities in the area. We do see folks sitting over there having a picnic or just enjoying the waterfront, perhaps posting some photos on Instagram. So in many ways, the uses of the space have already been demonstrated that it is an area that we want to take a closer look at. So the opportunity for us is really how can we thoughtfully enhance this area while preserving what people already enjoy about it? Are there amenities that would make the space more welcoming or comfortable? And how can we create a space that serves a variety of users? So just some existing conditions, there's a significant slope and some erosion runoff in that area. There's existing utilities, several of them that we need to be mindful of working around within the infrastructure there. And then it's already, as mentioned, become a popular space to sit and gather. So the opportunities, creating something perhaps more formal with benches and tables and tiered seating perhaps, something that could be creatively put in to shore up the existing hill, preventing that runoff and erosion. And then the challenges within the area, navigating around those existing utilities in the infrastructure, and then providing universal and ADA accessibility due to that slope. And then, of course, we always have to balance our community desires with construction costs and ongoing maintenance responsibilities for this area. So that's really something we have to keep at the forefront of what we do. Next slide, please.
How long is it? It's pretty long, it's from.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty long.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
It's pretty long,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's like a little
See,
sidewalk just past the
And then it-
subway, and then it just
just
drops
then.
down, and,
So I would say probably several hundred feet long,
Yeah.
if you're looking at the whole.
should we jump in the diving board?
Water water slide.
Judy, no one's gonna visit your kiosk if they're all on the island.
Well, a continuation of the meditation steps.
You can tell.
So we included some waterfront open space ideas just to, get you thinking a little bit. So one from Battery Park City, another included in the Battery Coastal Resiliency Project, and then Columbia University as well. So just some ideas to start to get your mind going on what that space could potentially offer.
Question.
Yep.
You noted the utilities and it's a challenge. Do we have access to access them?
To access them?
Yeah. There's room, there's actually, they're visible, so you could design something around it for sure. You could
Yeah.
create access. They're all basically, it's sort of a manhole, it's like an electrical box, it's a big sort of telecom and like a firebox. So you can just sort of keep that area clear. Usually it's about between 10 and 15 feet offsets, just so you have clear space in case they have to come in and service them, and then do everything closer to the water.
How close are they to the bridge?
There are ones that are directly
Yeah.
next to the bridge that we would want to also just make sure we offset from those. Those, I think, are electric, telecom, and fire for the bridge. So we want to make sure that we're just keeping our distance from them, and also making sure that if they need to be replaced at any point, that we're not impeding replacement of them either.
My question is actually like, could we have access to gas,
This-
common electric right there?
This would require us working with the agencies that are responsible for them.
But we could have,
Thinking.
what do you think?
I don't know, maybe something fancy.
Uh-huh, yeah, oh,
I mean, you could,
that's a good prompt for the next
Yeah.
slide.
I would say
Yeah.
there's also water and electric there, so it does give it does give flexibility
Okay.
to that too. I didn't even know it was a question.
I see an opportunity.
Yes. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
Also, you know, it's not our property, but under the bridge is the most dangerous part that people go down. It's very steep there, and we know DOT won't do anything,
Right.
but that's the trouble. You're gonna fix up something really nice, and there's gonna be the 50 feet that belong to the city that's gonna stay treacherous. Someone went down there one day, he went to get his phone that fell in, so I finally convinced a 70-year-old man that maybe public safety should take it.
Got it.
So and get it. I'm serious, the public safety went on the rocks to get it. And it's much steeper there than the rest.
yeah,
And at one time, New York Telephone, 9X or whatever they're called, wanted to put an observatory under that area, under the tram tower. They wanted to put an observatory. Maybe. But,
Okay.
you know, we have to consider under the bridge, not just stopping.
yeah, yeah. Talk about these a little bit. Oh, more, or you're good?
And then the next slide, just a couple questions and prompts to get you thinking about, how to envision that space. So how do you currently see people using it? What's the accessibility look like? Any type of seating that you think would fit this area well? What do you think it would benefit from as far as additional lighting or plantings? Any cosmetic changes? And then pedestrian enhancements. So just some initial questions to get you thinking.
Well, if we're going to be getting down
What's that?
if we're going to get down to the water area, slope.
The slope,
And so we would need a fairly long path in order to get down there.
right.
But we also need to worry about erosion.
Mhm.
There, so the path could have dry well, water absorbent features and channeling features.
Right, we would definitely have to think about how we shore up. It would seem that it's mostly just a dirt surround, and it's protecting whatever utility trench that's there. So the idea is like whatever we would have to do, we would have to sort of reinforce it with a retaining wall or something similar to that, and then we could actually add seating and pathways, because we want to make sure it is very steep, so making sure that there's some ramping that goes down. And then we can make it more decorative with wood or however we want to sort of make it not concrete blocks that you're sitting on. But we would have to think about that, because the erosion there is a problem. And it'll continue to be over time, so we have to think about the long-term viability of it.
Is this Coast Guard, Army Corps of Engineers land, you're touching their river?
Yeah.
We don't go in the river.
We're not gonna
As
go.
long as we.
I know it doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah, but that's always tricky with the waterfront. And I would say too, and we're interested if you have some off the cuff ideas too, as we talk about this one and the other ones that follow. Mary mentioned the cost considerations that are top of mind, and we do have a lot of priorities and a limited budget. But the reason we want to look at this is, I've heard from the community about this and the other places on the island, and can we do better as REAC with these spaces? But also, we're starting to build momentum with regards to grant opportunities, which Drew and Mary have been working closely together on. It's already borne some fruit for the tram and Eleanor's Pier. And so we don't want to miss out on those opportunities, whether they're city, state, or federal. And we have elected officials that are, in our corner now. And so, we want to, these whatever moment comes our way, which is also why we want to look at these things. And so we have a plan in case a door opens.
Are there any considerations to build above the space to sort of keep it on the level with the road as opposed to being on the ground?
Oh, more like a viewing,
Like
like
a-
a viewing platform, like our,
Yeah.
Actually,
we wouldn't have to worry about the grade problem then.
Right.
Actually, that'd be a lot easier.
And messing with the ground.
Yeah.
and they just fixed the road there.
Yeah.
They
We did.
So let's build up for it.
Well,
Beside it.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, so anyway, so these are, any other thoughts before we
Yeah,
get to the
just
next
one
one?
thought
Yeah.
is that, people come off the tram,
Mhm.
right, and then they don't know where to go, so they go there.
Right.
Right, and so can you build something that sort of takes them up to, right, like a promenade, was one of the things, and takes them up
Further
towards,
up.
further north.
Yeah,
towards
right.
The businesses.
Yeah, kind of
and
lead them.
lead them up there, and then
Uh-huh,
that
that's good.
potentially can connect to Eleanor's
That's good.
Pier. And I mean, I think in my mind, I know we're talking about grants, but like, we need to try to monetize some
Yes,
of these things.
yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And it is like, also with this, and again, we think these are the kinds of things that like grantees like, but there is also an argument, depending on the cost, but like if we can swing it, it's investments like these have shown in study after study to help generate revenue in neighborhoods and generate economic activity, to your point. So there's a case to be made, that, maybe not if it's $1 billion, but if it's a couple 100,000, whatever. We'll make the,
But we need to
let's
take
make the
them all the way to
analysis.
Main
But
Street
yeah,
so that
get
REDAC
them-
gets the
yeah.
the revenue.
Yeah, exactly, right. We'll
Strange
do
Blackwell house.
a yellow brick road to the center of town.
Quick before they finish paving by the subway.
Yeah.
And also think about revitalizing the north. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Okay.
Speaking of a northern part of the island, West Side Pier, so just a quick, very brief history, was constructed in 1995. And has served as a beautiful pier on the west side for nearly 30 years. The structure currently has 2 areas of structural collapse that limit its use and concerns about its future. So reimagining the pier, perhaps to better meet the needs of the community and its current uses. So adding new amenities or expanding some of the pedestrian areas leading up to it. Some challenges we've noted is the repair and reconstruction of the pier would require a significant investment. There is probably a hefty price tag in doing so. Also, the pier falls within the jurisdiction of DEP, DEC, and Army Corps of Engineers. So as Judy mentioned, they will all need to weigh in and also dictate, because there are tunnels that run underneath that pier as well as prow. So depending on what the reconstruction, or if there's an idea for a new design for the pier, we may be limited as far as what we could do, depending on the structure below. And then also, as far as timing in water work is restricted to certain times of the year. So if there were to be construction that would require that, that would add to the timeline of the project.
Do we know anything about the history? Who, why, what?
Sure, Claudia, can you give a,
Yes.
lovely.
So, I undertook the research assignment. I love a good research assignment. So this West Side Pier, and the prow were both built in 1995 as part of, I believe it was probably an abatement for the third water tunnel, when the city was building the never-ending third water tunnel, which runs, I think, between these 2 piers. So in terms of why they decided to build piers, it was probably, if I had to make an assumption, a community benefit that they had to provide for disruption, because I think that there was a lot of excavation happening behind it. They built these 2 piers. And then they added an addition, which is this fender, which is sort of the T part of that pier a little bit later, probably at 1997 or 1998. So it's not clear, it was built in cooperation with DEP, so it's not clear if they sort of gave the money to REDAC as part of a community benefit agreement and, we built it on their behalf, or if they built it and then basically handed it over to us. Had conversations with DEP and they have a record that this happened, but not sort of any transfer of ownership, which is very on brand for a lot of these waterfront structures, that somebody built it, but we don't really know who owns it after that.
Yeah.
Right. And so DEP is engaged
And so is DEC. DEC's also been sort of looped into the conversation around this as well.
to try to detect any flags that might make it particularly difficult, even though we know it's a challenge regardless, but so far, no barriers to.
Shouldn't be. It's just a matter of sort of time and what we have to do to reconstruct it, because we're in the process happening underneath and what potentially caused the failure. So it could have been any number of things, but we're trying to basically do a determination to understand where the damage is and have a better understanding of what potential repairs would need to happen. So more to come, I would say, in this one too.
Don't be afraid. What condition is the promenade doing up there? It's sort of like a parking lot. It's sort of messy. You know what I'm saying?
Just for the record, you did not sidebar with us prior to this presentation, right?
I know.
Only so many times.
Great question.
And here it is, Judy, here it is.
Unfortunately, I know this island like
Better than, probably.
I go up there and the sanctuary has an area, and it's just a dumpy area, and you sort of have to go around the old bollards to get back on a promenade about 50 feet, 100 feet down the road. So the heck with the pier, let's just make another promenade and save the crowd.
So that's this slide.
Yeah. I think
No
Judy,
one can dock their boats there, no one can dock their boats there, there's no more ferry boats. So get rid of this pier, make a really nice promenade and save the crowd.
I think Judy summed it up. Next slide. No.
But I would say that we felt very similarly, that this area is sort of lacking, it's sort of half asphalt, half gravel, not very well lit, but is actually an opportunity to potentially create some enhancement.
Yeah, I think you make a really nice promenade, and you don't need the second pier, because there's no use for the second pier.
There's a lot of.
Other than the wedding.
Yeah.
that
Well,
Which is interesting. We have a
So,
point on that.
Yeah, I spoke with Turtle, who runs the sanctuary, Frank. And he mentioned that the prow is actually
Yeah.
where he prefers
Yeah.
to use. And he said, he'd be open to not, if it's the pier, it's the pier, but that he would love to see this area vitalized and refreshed.
Pay us to use that space?
He does not, but he would need to permit with us if he wanted to use the prow.
And,
No.
oh, I'm so
No,
sorry.
no, go ahead.
It is or is not a parking lot? It does or does not belong with
It is a parking lot. It is a parking lot, but there you have it, and that's part of the issue, right? Is it's unclear as to where the parking lot ends, where the pedestrian area begins. So that's something we want to certainly address with an enhancement and with community feedback. But our feeling is that the pedestrian area could be made much more safe. There perhaps could be a space for bike lanes to connect that West Esplanade, adding lighting, adding seating, making it more inviting, where right now it is strictly just kind of want to get out of there, So
Right.
we want to make it more inviting and, Judy, anything?
Isn't there a path that leads up by the tennis courts from there?
Mhm.
There is,
Yeah. Which is also sort of,
which is also dim.
That's where the cats
Mhm.
I don't discuss cats.
So,
Take the fifth.
like,
Question though, I'm just thinking about when I've attended events.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about parking.
Yeah.
And if
Because there are cars that park there for events.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So I would say, Mary, you mentioned it just briefly, but this is something that we would want to do as part of this project, but it's also related to another initiative we're doing that Lance is leading with the legal team that's not ready for prime time yet, but doing an assessment of all of our agreements to understand the terms, meets and bounds in some cases, because there could be an opportunity here to clean some things up, and maybe things that should be permitted that aren't permitted, not to make it specific about the sanctuary, or fees that should be paid, or more fees that should be paid, or less fees that should be paid. But that's definitely something that we need to dig into in the commercial agreement, because the sanctuary is part of that.
What is the sanctuary boundaries?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
It's a house of God. We want.
That's on our growing
Because
to-do
they
list.
think too, have usurped your trees and every kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. And it's, and it's a potential opportunity for partnership. If there is shared space, then we want to work together, and,
We should earn a fee for their marketing and advertising.
Excuse me, how about paying me a fee?
Very nice.
It was 48 years.
So,
I just have a question on the west side pier to
Mhm.
Claudia. Would DEP or DEC, since we don't know who actually owns the structure, would they be able to go into a cost-sharing agreement with us, you think?
Highly unlikely,
Okay.
unless that there's specifically a DEP asset that we need to protect as part of the project. Like if we had to work with them to do, if there was like a water sewer, like a CSO or something, we had to relocate as part of the project, then you could have a conversation with them. But to them, they're like, oh, it's not our responsibility, because there's no legal agreement on paper that says it's theirs, so.
absent that agreement.
Absent that agreement, it would have to be that if we came into contact with a piece of their infrastructure and we had to consult with them in a way that was actually like our project would interfere, if we had to drive a pile or something and it would interfere with their infrastructure, we would have to go to them for review so we could have a conversation about
Yeah,
what's required of some.
yeah.
Okay.
But they could be helpful in
Yeah.
advocating for,
Yeah. Especially because the water tunnel is there.
yeah, the challenge, yeah, that's right.
So just some questions around the West Side Pier and adjacent open space areas. Start thinking about how are people currently using the space? How do you use the space when you're over there? Is the pier something that is heavily utilized? Should more emphasis be placed on that, or should we look at improving the waterfront adjacent areas of the pedestrian space, and adding additional lighting, planting, seating, any other amenities that come to mind? We'd be happy to hear thoughts and ideas. Corral, so just south of the west side here. Can you go to the next slide, please? So we're currently in the design phase. We are working with our design firm. They're having a geotechnical probing of the soil and foundation of the area near the prow to determine the ground conditions and ensure that whatever the new foundation design ends up being can safely support the loads of the structure. So it'll provide those recommendations and any special measures that we'll need to address. The timeline for completion of design is anticipated in August. And then from there, we will have to take a look at the schedule, and we may do some adjusting depending on the feedback that we receive about the west side pier. And if it makes sense to allow for both projects to be RFP'd as a single package, we would do that. It makes sense, but we'd like to get the community feedback about that area by the west side pier as well as the waterfront space before making that decision. Some challenges associated with this project are similar to the ones in the prior slide. It will require a significant investment. The pier falls within that same jurisdiction that we spoke about before. And as with pier work, in-water work is restricted to certain times of year.
Is there, oh, sorry, no, go ahead.
You're a member of them.
Is there gonna be like a public comment period about what people want from the space?
Into that too.
Are they designing the pier to be the same metal? Are they redesigning the pier or just the foundation of the pier?
For the prow, they're studying the entirety of the prow. So they're looking at everything from the foundation to metal plates to the soil underneath to determine what is suited for that area.
Well, what is suited for graffiti painting?
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
No, seriously.
Yeah.
It's been wrecked so many times by graffiti. I think it isn't.
Washable surface.
Washable. Seriously.
Yeah.
So there are graffiti, sorry, speaking for experience, there are graffiti treatments you can do on both paint, like
Right,
paint
yeah.
that's in marine environments, but also that you use on concrete, that basically you can take it off a power washer and it doesn't damage what's underneath. It's what they used on the Wagner Pavilion. They used a graffiti coating in Battery Park City, sorry. But they used a graffiti coating on a pigmented concrete, and like 3 days after they put it on, somebody graffitied the building, and they had a real-time test to show that it actually came off the building. So there are newer advancements in that we could look at for sure.
Okay. One before our final
And then-
chapter.
North Pier, what? So we went out with an RFP in March and received responses back from early May. Dockhand Services was selected to complete the work. The total project cost is estimated to be 1.3 million, and will be coming to the board on during the June 23rd meeting for approval. We would like to thank Senator Kruger for providing $617,000 grant towards this project, and thank you, Drew, for your work on that as well. Once approved, REDAC will direct the contractor to mobilize and begin work quickly on any construction-related activities to proceed while the necessary permits are obtained. Permits are priority one to get those submitted and processed. But if there's anything that can be done in the meantime while those are being worked on for the marine work, we will encourage the contractor to do so because we are eager to open this pier. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we are going to hold a workshop during the week of July 6th, so stay tuned. We'll get more information on dates and times in the coming weeks. And then we also have the West Side Infrastructure Improvement Survey, which you can tonight if you like, or you can wait until you do the workshop to capture all the feedback and ideas that you have in those spaces. And we'll also post this on our website so we can gather information.
Becky's working on it. And I would say, just to put a finer point on it, like we were focused a lot on what the structural changes might be, but particularly for, well, not just particularly for Eleanor's Pier and the Prow, actually, the West Side Open Space. Melissa, you touched on it, thinking about programmatically also what you'd like to see there, if anything, in terms of programming. And by that, I mean, whether it's a cafe or lighting or tables and chairs, maybe some of, the Mickey Mouse from Times Square, walking around. Cowboy. Spider-Man. But to also think seriously as we think about kind of structurally what would be desirable there, what programmatically would be desirable there, and we'll take our cues from you and also the feedback from the community, which we'll bundle and share with you, and then sort of like what we're going to do with the tram cards in a second.
Across the river at, for the pier on, above the old sanitation garage.
Uh-huh.
They made that into something amazing.
Yeah.
We can just have another one to jet out and make it.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah, so we'll so stay tuned for the official push of the survey and the walking tour, and if there's demand for more than one, we'll be happy to do that. And so that's the West Side infrastructure item. And we have one more if you're ready to roll. The most fun one, I think. So I'm pinch hitting for Bryant, which we all discussed is otherwise occupied at the moment. But as you remember, in conjunction with the Tramiversary, we issued a call for ideas to repurpose the old tram cabins that have been sitting here dilapidated for a long time, and really looking for inspiration, sort of like this last section that we talked about, as we talk about rethinking how we can make better uses of our spaces, from smallpox hospital ruins to Blackwell House, to the tram cars, Motorgate Garage, the West Side Piers. This rich in opportunities on the island. And so we had a great response. Over 150 people responded. And no surprise, by and large, people are interested in are excited about repurposing the old tram cars, doing so on the island and in our public spaces. Some that were mentioned often was the plaza near the tram itself. Although, to the extent they weren't specific, a lot of the ideas were like placed in a public space on Roosevelt Island. Some were more focused on celebrating the tram's history or using it as an amenity, but a lot of different interesting ideas. And I do want to say we really appreciate everyone that submitted an idea. And what I was talking about. And so the cafe concept was the most popular one, but also suggestions for a mini museum space, potentially making it some kind of playground equipment, a public art installation, a gathering space. We also saw observation areas, gardens, educational installations, a bus stop. So lots of food for thought. And with the help of AI, I just share some of the images that we got. The first image is related to a playground concept of some sort. On the left, you see a seating area. On the right, a library and cafe. And then a couple others. Another cafe option looks like Eleanor's Pier on the upper left. On the upper right, some kind of perpendicular installation near the kiosk, an art installation on the bottom left, and then a subterranean memorial kind of educational area to honor the tram history. And on the upper left, not the tram, but this was a reference point that was submitted to us as a bus stop idea. An ice cream shop, a roadside cafe on the left, and another kind of public space garden cafe on the right. And so those are many of the images that we received, but have indeed provided some food for thought and some inspiration. So the wheels are turning. No food?
No, the truth is, since the hot dog truck is gone, and since the one at the tram, at the subway, look how much cleaner those areas are. And I think the Wrights have retired from living in back of the kiosk. No, I'm seriously, food is a horror because people come off the tram, they eat their food, and we had rats all last year. And unfortunately, tourists don't observe any courtesy of, so I'm very hesitant about food.
Okay, so noted.
Right.
And so we'll see so this is just kind of preliminary timeline that we're kind of thinking of, is that we'll spend a little more time over the summer looking at the ideas and thinking about feasibility, and then thinking about kind of going back to the public, just to like, now that we have these ideas,
Budget.
that's right. You know, what do you think would be
Yep.
a good addition to the island? And then whittle down to our preferred uses in the fall, and then start building out an implementation plan and budget for it. And then when we actually mobilize, kind of depends on budget and funding. Again, maybe this can gin up some interest to help make this possible, but just to kind of give you a sense of the framework, you know, maybe there's a world where we have a anniversary where we announce the idea for the tram in next May with a plea for a foundation grant for it or something like that. But anyways, we'll spend the next couple of months thinking about
maybe on
it.
the west side.
Maybe on
Right.
the west side. That's
Okay,
exactly
that's one thing.
Yeah.
The tram wheels and gears are the greatest
Yeah,
thing in the world.
mentioned.
They should be preserved.
Art, yeah.
They are amazing. You know, they're down there amongst
Yeah.
the debris in the most filthy state I've ever seen.
Filthy.
It's really disgusting.
Yeah.
Please, and there's no
Yeah.
reason that it should be that way. So, but
Great.
I was looking at the wheels and gears, and they made me much more excited than the tram cabins. And they can be
Yeah.
stationary, they weigh a lot, but, I mean, they are amazing things
Yeah,
to look
yeah,
at. And
yeah.
they should be out in the public, you know.
Yeah.
If we had any museums reach out to us, I'm not saying anything should go off island.
We haven't had any reach out to us, but somebody did mention that they thought it would be great to have one of the tram cars in the Museum of the City of New York, for example, which is interesting. Yeah.
Even on loan, perhaps.
Maybe on loan. Yeah.
We went to the Brooklyn Children's Museum, since we took the kiosk from them, they can take the.
Yeah. So that has come up as an idea. So we'll do a little more homework and continue the discussions with REDAC and, you know, the rest of the board to the extent, you know, they're interested in weighing in. And we'll take a temperature check of, you know, the community on the ideas to see what seems to make the most sense. And so we welcome your thoughts as we explore this further in the months to come.
I regret to inform you, I won't be at the public meeting on Tuesday.
Okay.
Election day after.
Okay. You can call us the next day with your public comments if you're not going to call us the day
I really
before.
appreciate it. I don't know much about the groundly stuff, but this is where we talk about stuff, and if you don't let people talk about stuff, we won't know what's happening with the roof of Blackwell House.
The inspectors.
They were there
Yeah.
last Friday, actually, and they did an
Yeah.
inspection, and we're getting a report probably a draft report end of next week.
And what do these inspections do? What do they do? What are they gonna say? When do we fix it?
Well, what the report's gonna have recommendations for either repair, replacement, and any other additions, like any other work we need to do on the outside of the building. And then they're gonna prepare a permit set so we can go to Landmarks and SHPO and get the approvals from them to actually file and get the work done.
Still a process, but
It's a process,
It's
but we're moving, the process is
Moving,
moving,
yeah.
so that's good.
Is that, by the way, you have to come to my office. I found. No, I have a lot of environmental, there's a lot of
Yeah,
original
that'd be-
reports.
No, that would be
In the
great.
Octagon.
You don't have to threaten me with looking at historical reports. I would love to. No, I'm.
No, because the truth is, I have so much stuff that we have from years ago that, you know, you may be searching for. I have stuff about Octagon Park and stuff.
No, that would be great.
Just come on up.
Okay, that sounds
Yeah,
good.
not Tuesday, because I'll be working the election.
Okay.
Not Tuesday.
Yeah, maybe
No,
Wednesday.
you want to hear something sad? We've had early voting since last Saturday in the gallery for the elections. I went in today to say hi to my friends. We've had less than 400 voters come in 7 days. You know, where are we? Anyhow.
Thanks, Judy.
Okay, bye, Judy.
You should definitely go visit it. You may be able to find out who owns the West Side Pier.
100% taking up on
Maybe
this,
she
Judy.
has a contract with
Yeah.
her.
You know?
The first lady
Yeah.
of what the program is for, water line,
Mhm.
the boats,
Mhm.
the ferry boats coming over with anchors would pull up the water line.
That sounds
The
about right.
water line
Oh.
is about 20 feet below. Yeah, well, I think it's something like that.
Yes.
Okay.
Becky will come with
Yeah.
us. No, Becky will come with us.
And we can also budget, you know, that idea for the tram cabins for next year.
Yeah, exactly.
Mobilize
That's,
this year. Yeah.
like, also, right, remember the
Mhm.
board, we start thinking,
Mhm.
you and I and Mary, man, we start thinking about the budget in July,
Correct.
and then with the board,
Right.
early,
Starts
you know, the
early.
fall, we start building it. So it is, you know, time to, we'll look at and see what is possible for
Yeah.
all of this stuff.
So, two things. Tape should note that Fay Christian committee member left about 6:40. And now it's almost 7 o'clock, and we're going to take a motion for going into an executive session. It shouldn't be too long.
Yeah, that's right.
Moved.
Second? And we agree?
And,
Executive session.
Drew and Lance,
Okay.
executive session. It's free.
That is a-
And we,
You might have. to
Maybe
be
more
there.
time.
we've been in an executive session. The time is now 7:45, and we are entertaining a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
And
All those in favor?
the meeting is adjourned.